Hi, listeners. Thanks for joining today. Nicole introduced me to Riley. So we have today Riley and Nicole as my co-host. And I just want to say a little bit about the format. So we have around 30 to 35 minutes. And the format is also like Nicole will introduce Riley because she knows you, and then Riley, it's all up to you. You can tell your story, what you want to promote today. This is now your platform.
Yeah,
Sounds
absolutely.
great.
The thing is, I'm in a Digital Nomad WhatsApp group, and I just did it just to connect with people because later on I'm looking for like a fully remote job to move back to Madrid next year and like whatnot. And I was just asking some questions, and then I was trying to like also like interview people who work remotely because I think people need to know how to be able to apply for remote jobs or how to apply for digital nomad visa. And then Riley, he decided to reach out and message me, and then we connected, and yeah, it's been great. So now he can share his story and how he became a founder of his own company and then his journey and whatnot.
Definitely. Well, thanks for the introduction. I'll give a brief background of everything you just mentioned, and then if you guys have some specific questions or things based on that you want to dive into, that'd be great. I guess the story really starts right before the pandemic. I'm from New York originally. I lived there till I was 18, and then was in college. I'm in the UK for about 6 years. And so right before the pandemic, I was actually finishing a master's in politics. And so I was writing a lot, and basically I stayed in the UK and was working with a professor that I had met through the master's program. And then the pandemic happened, which obviously upended a lot of stuff for a lot of people. I ended up moving back to the US. In the time where I had been away, most of my family had moved to Florida. So I ended up in Miami actually when I moved back to the US, still working remote with the UK. And really, my idea at that point was to do journalism, and I was always working on as a freelancer for the UK company. And then once I was back in the US, I was doing freelance journalism, um, and sort of by accident, I stumbled into the world of tech and journalism for tech, journalism about tech in Miami. During the pandemic, a lot of people moved to Miami, both in terms of digital nomads, so people, even that can even be within a country, right? So people maybe that are from New York or from San Francisco or wherever, and they wanted just a different pace of life. A lot of people moved to Miami for that, and then we're still working for their company. And then a lot of companies just moved there as well. So a lot of offices sprouted up, and basically it was a bit of a right place, right time situation to a great extent there because I was able to kind of jump on the wave, jump on the bandwagon of people moving there and tech companies. And to support them more, I started writing content directly for them. The world of journalism isn't that high growth, let's say. I wouldn't go as far to say it's a dying industry, but it's definitely changing a lot. And I wanted to do the same kind of stuff, so writing articles about tech, but instead of doing it for newspapers and blogs and whatnot, do it directly for companies themselves and sharing their story, establishing them as thought leaders. And so that just led me to founding my business, Clear Critical, where we write for tech startups and tech investors. A lot of LinkedIn content, their blogs, ghostwriting, all that good stuff. And the beauty of that job, and what's relevant for listeners, is just that it's totally remote in nature. So I love attending in-person conferences and events and meetings when that's relevant, but the majority of my work can be done remotely. And that's really good for me because I'm quite extroverted naturally, but my job works a bit better if you're on the more introverted side, doing writing and yeah, that's a little better if you're just in a quiet room. So it's kind of nice for me to have the balance of when I'm kind of traveling, I really have my own space and can think clearly about what I'm doing. And then when I'm in person at different events, I can just be fully engaged in the moment. And so that led me then 2 or 3 months ago now to Madrid. I lived here previously. I studied abroad here for a year and fell in love, similar to Nicole. And I really wanted to come back for years. I mean, since 2016, I think it was when I studied here, I wanted to come back. And then this new digital nomad visa opened up. I mean, months ago. I pretty much applied as soon as I could, get all the paperwork and get the fingerprints taken and whatnot. And I've been here ever since, and I'm really enjoying it. And I mean, I'm going through all the paperwork, and we can talk a bit about that if you want. I feel like there's a never-ending stream of paperwork, even once you get the visa, like I already have. But hoping to do more digital nomading around Europe in 2024. Is that a helpful overview?
Yeah, so you're actually now in Madrid?
I'm now in Madrid.
Yeah, me too. So
It's a great place to be.
Yeah, I mean, Nicole is not the only one who fall in love with this, because
Yep.
me too. And second, we're collecting a group of people who falling in love with Madrid. So it's getting bigger and bigger. So okay, so that's for Madrid. But I have now some questions. So to understand about your business, so you actually brought your journalism skills now to digital content writing. Is that a good description?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And it's really very similar type of content in many cases, but it's just for a different type of client.
Right. And then I have to have the question. So you had already contacts as you worked as a journalist. So how you actually getting your clients? I mean, I went to your website and you get some good references. And then my second question would be, what kind of platform you actually use? You use what they're giving you, like blogs, LinkedIn, and what else?
So in terms of the first part of your question about client acquisition, at first it was very organic. I mean, I think the first client I had was someone who I wrote an article about for one of the publications, and she said, "Wow, I really liked how you told our story. What would it cost for you to do that for us on our channels?" And so then that kind of made I didn't even know what content marketing was really at that point. In some ways, it's still kind of a young field. So, anyways, after that, then and that was years ago now, I started to hone my skills and build more of a reputation. And really, up until a few months ago, it has just been referrals and people who know me through my journalism. I still do a fair bit of journalism as well. And just 2 months ago, I started more of a cold emailing campaign. So I'm working with an agency that's really good at sending cold emails and just kind of sales stuff in general to people who don't know me. So I've been working and doing that, which is totally new for me, but an interesting challenge. And then in terms of your second question, Mike, with the most clients that I work with, LinkedIn is the best because if they're an investor and they're trying to raise funds for their VC, or they're trying to get access to the best deals, they really need to be a thought leader and they need to attract other business people. And the best place to do that is LinkedIn. The algorithm is amazing, really, for that kind of content. And it's a similar situation for founders. I think for founders, they're typically wanting to do a bit more. So, for example, not just LinkedIn, but maybe their blog. Of course, there are kind of SEO benefits of having blog content on your website as well, which is important for building a business. But really, I guess right now all of my clients are B2B primarily. And so for that, being on LinkedIn is definitely the place to be. I am closely watching some of these video platforms, like TikTok, YouTube Shorts. I think there's definitely something there. It's funny. I would never think that would be a place for these kinds of people to promote themselves. But I had one of my clients fairly recently who's a former executive and an angel investor. I mean, he's late 60s, early 70s. And he said to me, "Oh, should I be on TikTok?" And I thought, no, definitely not. Why would you be on TikTok? And then I sort of realized he's on TikTok and he's really getting influenced by TikTok. And I thought to myself, if a person like that is on that platform, then he can't be the only one. So there's probably something here. So I don't do that right now, but I'm very interested in seeing how that evolves. But lots of different opportunities for telling your story, and that's what we help these investors and founders do.
Okay, so I have to say something. So I have a background with marketing, and also I worked to learn more about digital marketing because it's came up. And I'm also a tech consultant, so I know a little bit the inside how it works. And I'm also a co-founder of a artificial intelligence company, and also work with other startups in Canada. And what I want to say is, I heard in these webinars that B2B is actually not to be used with TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. Maybe not Facebook, but the primary channel should be LinkedIn and Twitter. So, I mean, I just want to hear your guys' opinion on this.
I definitely think for today that is totally correct. I mean, it's just, even I would go further and say LinkedIn is really where you should be focusing. I mean, these kinds of investors and founder, they don't have a lot of time to spend on this, and so really, if they're going to focus their efforts, I think do LinkedIn really well because just the algorithm's better and it's more effective. I just think going forward, it will be really interesting to see because the trends are changing. The trends are really changing. I mean, even LinkedIn, I would say, wasn't quite where it is now a few years ago. I think, for example, like in the beginning of the pandemic, as a reference point,
Mhm.
newsletters were really big, and really I was focusing a lot on newsletters and thinking about doing that well in Substack. And I think that sort of longer format has even kind of, I don't think it's phased out, but I think it's definitely gone down a bit since the peak a couple of years ago. So it's always evolving. And the other thing also, Mike, is a lot of people are creating video content on LinkedIn. I mean, I was very resistant to that personally for on my personal page to promote my business. But I have a marketing assistant who twisted my arm enough to get me to do it. And I mean, it's amazing. The algorithm really appreciates when you have different types of content, and video in particular helps. So it's definitely an exciting and ever-changing field, and worth keeping an open mind about these new platforms and formats.
So to video, you mean I worked with a client where we did like a 43-second video to explain actually their software and the benefits for this, and we use it now for email campaigns and everything, right? So I mean, I'm not saying every single video is not good. I mean, I'm just saying it depends on the platform. But you said also it's gonna change, right? I mean, what is now? You're talking about LinkedIn, yes. LinkedIn was now bought by Microsoft, and you see the influence now also, right?
Definitely, probably for the worse, at least in terms of the notifications. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I'm just bombarded, and in mails as well. I mean, just so many people soliciting anything on LinkedIn email. So definitely not a perfect platform. I mean, in some ways, I find LinkedIn very frustrating, but just for business purposes, that's where you want to be, in my opinion.
So Nicole, you have an opinion on this?
Yeah, so I think LinkedIn is also really great too as well, because it depends like who you're gonna find. It could be like a VP, it could be like account manager, right? Whoever. And I just think it's just easier. I think it's just more professional in a sense of like networking rather than TikTok or Instagram. People really use like Instagram either just for their personal use to like connect with friends or family, or they're doing travel content, or they do have their own business. But I just feel like it is more appropriate to be able to like network more within LinkedIn rather than using like social media platforms like TikTok, Instagram, and so forth. So I think it's better and it's a lot more appropriate and effective. Mm-hmm.
I
What do
mean, it's
you?
okay.
Oh, sorry.
No, I just
No.
want to say it's dependent if it's B2B or B2C. An example is rather what you're doing is B2B, and then Nicole is doing something helping these people if they want to study abroad or off-road,
Yep,
outside.
that's B2C.
Then yeah,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. That's only what I wanted to say.
However, however, my company, I need to reach out to schools. So that's also business to business, because once I reach out to schools, then I bring their clients, aka students, to the programs, and then they're getting, and then also like, they're paying the companies. So yeah, it is B2C and B2B, because schools are also businesses too. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
What do you guys think about Twitter? Because on a personal
don't
level,
use
I
it.
love Twitter. I use it constantly, all day, every day, just injected into my veins, 24/7 pretty much. But from a business perspective, it has given me little to nothing. I'm
I
curious to
honestly,
you
I
what
used it
your
just to
experience.
vent when I was in college. I didn't really use it that much at all. I know Reddit is supposed to be really good too. I think Reddit has like a really good community, like digital nomads, remote workers, stuff like that. So yeah, and
One
Facebook
of my
groups.
clients actually, speaking of B2B, one of my, sorry to go on a bit of a tangent on Reddit, but just to validate what you're saying, one of my clients, which is totally B2B, I mean, they are like a software platform, but they have kind of interesting niches. And they found that, yeah, they're into labs, for example, laboratory software type stuff. They found a um, lab nerd, let's say, Reddit page, and had a lot of success with that. So don't sleep on
Fun.
Reddit.
I mean, for Twitter, there's an owner change. You know that Elon Musk took over, and some people don't like what's going on right now. So I don't see a difference, but I just heard about this kind of statements.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see how it plays out. I mean, I'm curious, Mike, do you do any work with people in Spain, or are you just based in your work mostly internationally?
Yeah, that's interesting. So I uh, be a co-founder of a company is actually based in Malta, and we worked together with the La Salle University in Barcelona, and we also have people from Spain working with us. So I would say I'm international. My other clients are, but are in North America. So working with 3 startups, and all of them are in Canada.
Yeah, I mean, this is an interesting question I'd like to learn more from other digital nomads about, where it's like, I mean, I think the traditional advice is, like you were saying earlier, Nicole, like get a good job in the US, or a remote job in the US, or set up a remote business in the US, and then just kind of bring that abroad. Increasingly, though, I'm wondering what opportunities there are outside of that. Now, of course, with the digital nomad visa, I can't remember exactly what the legislation was, but it's like, I think it's like you can't have more than 20% of your income come from Spain, from Spanish businesses. Um, but yeah, I'm kind of curious because now, I'm going to networking events and different things. I think in Spain the people are used to paying a bit less for professional services than the US maybe, but um yeah, I'm wondering if anyone has any experience
No, but by the
with
way,
that.
I don't have a digital nomad visa. So I got a non-NLV visa, non-lucrative visa. And yeah, so I mean, when I got my visa, digital nomad visa in Spain didn't exist. It existed only from other countries. So they started that beginning of this year. And I know only someone from Mexico who wanted to get this, but then she went to a consulate and they didn't even know about it. So it's very early. So I mean, I don't know when you got yours, but it's beginning of the year. Nothing happened. They just talked about it. Right? For Spain, that's my experience.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much you want to talk about the Spain digital nomad visa, but I could talk for hours about it. I'll just give you one little snippet of a story. I mean, I got the digital nomad visa, like I was given authorization a month ago, almost exactly. And since then, I've had to do a lot of different other paperwork related to it, getting my fingerprints taken, getting the relevant numbers. But the Social Security was really important because basically, in order to get the visa, I had to send a letter saying, the second you give me the visa, I promise to sign up for Social Security because technically, through the digital nomad visa, I'm a autónomo, they call it in Spain, or a freelance worker.
Yep.
Of course, last week I went to the Social Security office. The woman had not come in contact with this visa before. And she looks at it and says, "Oh, well, you have the right to reside in Spain, but not to work in Spain," which is plainly wrong. But, me being a random foreign person, I didn't really know how to articulate that. So I've been working with a lawyer through the process, through this whole process. And I told him my experience, and he said, "That's totally crazy. I'll go with you." And so literally we went yesterday, and he just had to ask her boss, who I guess is slightly more informed about it. And he's like, "Oh yeah, that's fine." But yeah, I mean, to your point, Mike, this is all so fresh and so new. There's still at so many levels, you're having to educate people through it. Now, the good news is I'm sure now that the Social Security person had given me the Social Security number as a digital nomad, maybe the next time he sees that, she won't, so it's gonna get better, but yeah, just complicated for sure. Early days.
So my story was I didn't started with this NLV, the non-lucrative visa. I actually started with a business visa. I wanted to create a company in Spain. I went through this, but it became too complicated that I stopped in the process. But I got my number, whatever that number is in Spanish, as a business investor. So, and then from then, I applied for the non-lucrativa visa and went also to all the fingerprints and background checks and whatever. And when they asked me to come here, they wanted for me that I buy two insurances, one for my health and one that if I die, that they don't, my body gets taken away or something. So this kind of insurance, that was the requirement for me, what I needed.
That's very dark. That's very dark. I would have told them, "I don't plan to die anytime soon. It's fine, you guys."
Jesus, I know.
No, but Mike, I had the exact same thing where I had to buy private healthcare insurance, which being an American, it made me feel like I'm at home. I'm totally used to that. But I think that might not have been necessary. But again, it's all up in the air and so much happening. I think the other thing, I mean, I'm not sure if your audience is US based. This is sort of hearsay. I don't know. I don't know this firsthand from my experience necessarily, but from what I understand, it's a bit more difficult for full-time American people, like people who are we call it W-2 in the US, full-time employees, to get the digital nomad visa in Spain because technically the Spanish government wants that company, the company that employs you, to set up shop in Spain for Social Security purposes. And as Mike just said, that ain't easy. That's really an administrative burden that I doubt any company would do. And so actually I applied originally as like a full-time employee for my business. And then ended up applying just as a freelance person, freelance business owner, so that my business didn't have to set up shop in Spain. So yeah, lots happening.
And in my case, because I got the NLV, I can't apply for digital nomad visa because that's another rule, what they said. If you have another visa, you can't apply for digital nomad visa. So I have no chance to apply for a digital nomad visa for Spain. I could apply for a different country, but not for Spain.
I was also curious too as well, how do like EU citizens work remotely for like US US companies if like obviously like they're not like American citizens or Canadians, right? but I was just curious how that works. So even though they're like EU citizens, so that's also something I'm just like interested in like hearing more if you guys like know any information or anything of that nature with taxes and stuff.
I mean, with taxes as an American, it doesn't matter what nationalities or residencies you have, you're always
Mhm.
going to have to pay tax in the US.
Right.
I think it would be a bit complicated. You might know better. For me, my first take would be it would be a bit complicated for a European to work for an American company outside of America, just because wouldn't that company have to have a presence in Europe to employ them in the first place? You know, it's sort of like if you were European and just trying to work in the US full stop, you'd need a visa to
Mhm.
do that, and that's very expensive and complicated. So I think that might be difficult. I mean, that's why sort of the cheat code here is freelancing, you know, and having your
Yep.
own business.
Yeah, I think so too as well.
But Mike might have more perspective on that.
I mean, what you're talking about to work in the US. So that was also interesting because I changed my citizenship and a long time ago. But at that time when I lived in the US, I was not Canadian citizen. But then I got this kind of not green card, something in before, right? So H1B. So I worked for an H1B for in the US. Then I moved to Canada, and then I got another kind of special Canada US visa because they have a kind of agreement. So that's my experience working in the US, right? And I know that every time we flew from Canada to the US, they're always asking, "Are you working here? Do you have the working papers?" And sometime or one time I was even rejected to enter the US because they have already the checkup in the airport in Toronto. So I couldn't even make it to the plane because the paperwork was not correct. So that's my experience.
Nightmare, total
Yes.
nightmare.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
what's positive about now is you don't even have to be in the US or be American to work for US companies. You know, that's the beauty of
Yeah.
this remote work revolution. And I mean, obviously, it's good for the digital nomads. I mean, I think all three of us can attest to that.
Mhm.
But it's also really good for the companies because they get access to talent that otherwise they wouldn't, especially for startups, which, you know, they're not going to sponsor an H-1B visa, or that, you know, that'd be quite difficult for
Mhm.
them to do in many cases, but they could employ that person as a remote worker. So it's
Yeah,
quite a
I
good
also
opportunity.
want to. Yeah, I also want to talk about too as well. Like, it's so interesting when people are looking for like remote jobs, right? They have to like really look at like the homepage and make sure like it's remote first because I could say like remote in Canada, remote in USA, remote, you know, like in Europe. So it's really important to make sure like you ask those questions during the interview because it's if it's just like, oh, it's remote like in one country, it means you just can't like freely move around. So it is really important to like know the difference. And I
And
feel like, you know, remote okay, we work remotely.com, job get her is such a great company. They're like a European startup, but they have like over my God, like 7,000 jobs, remote jobs for like 1099 independent contractors and stuff. So, yep.
to add what Nicole said, so I worked in the past as IT consultant in cybersecurity, and now I'm wanted to get a job staying in Madrid and working for clients in Canada. So they all require me to be remote, but remote in Canada. So I have no chance to do this from here. So I mean, this
No.
is. I mean, it's depend what you do. If you like yourself, you're a content writer, then you can work from everywhere. But for certain jobs, they have this limitations, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of US jobs have that too, from what I understand, where it's like you're allowed to work outside of the country for X number of days, you know, maybe it's like a few weeks, a year. But I think it's for tax reasons because if they have employees in other countries, then it gets complicated for them. But I think like the smaller companies are typically more open to different arrangements. I mean, that's what I was doing with the UK company before all of this. I was more or less full time. I mean, I was spending most of my time doing that, but I was still a contractor um, through my business. So
I mean, I did when I lived in Canada, work for a US company, a contract in Belgium. That was interesting. So, but
Love
that
it.
was only for a month or so, right? So, but and then
Yeah.
I got paid. Yeah, I got paid in Canada. So, but it's all. I mean, I did also other projects where I spent 2 months working for a US company. Uh, they had an office in Germany, so I worked in Frankfurt for 2 months. But it's all, yeah, it's complicated. That's what I have to say, and it becomes every year even more complicated with this now new thing with digital nomads. Yeah, so you have to really, yeah, I mean, if it works out for you, then congratulations. I mean, for Nicole's personal thing is, I mean, if she has now a EU, or let's say a passport from a nation of
Yep.
the EU. So I
Yep.
mean, she has no problem to come back to Madrid and said, I'm staying here. Then she has the other way around, what the US people saying to work for them, right? So, but for here in Europe, she can work for everyone, right?
Mhm.
But she has to
Yeah.
pay then the taxes where she actually lives, right? If she lives in Madrid, then she pays somehow taxes for Spain. So that's another complication, but that's what they asked. And if she's a kind of autonomous status, what they have here in Spain, and I know some people living in Spain, they have this. That's also very complicated with social security, and sometimes they get really in trouble because they have to pay that. And yeah, so that's what I heard. I have not much insight in this.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I've been navigating recently. And my only advice to people would be find a good lawyer to get you the visa, and then ask that good lawyer for a good accountant. And that's been good for me. I mean, I think coming from the US perspective, you might think that that's like thousands and thousands of dollars. It's really not. I mean, I needed to get like set up in the social security system, and this accountant service that I'm working with, which is, a real business, legit thing, was charging like 40 euros or something for that. It's really reasonable. And I mean, I'm kind of conservative when it comes to that. I want to pay my fair share, and having a professional to help with that is really, really valuable.
Okay, guys, so we have only a couple less than 6 minutes left. So I mean, can we switch a little bit to you, Riley, that you can promote what you're doing, where you can find what's your website, what's your social media, so that we can give you the opportunity to promote your services.
Yes, thank you so much. Well, you can find me on LinkedIn. It's Riley Kaminer, and my business is called Clear Critical. The content writing business, that's clearcritical.com. And if you're particularly a startup founder or someone who invests in startups, like a VC or an angel investor, those are the main people we help tell their story. Typically, it looks like an engagement with us looks like.
Okay, that sounds good. Nicole, you have anything to say before you're rounding up this today?
No, I mean, I think it was great. Like, we learned a lot about the digital nomad visa, like Riley's business, like how he started. And no, I think it's been really great. Thank you so much for, being on here, Riley. Really appreciate it. Absolutely.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. Great to chat with you guys.
Okay, so keep in touch, Riley. Maybe we can have a coffee somewhere in downtown or Centro.
I'd love that. That sounds great.
Okay, great. Thank you, guys.
Look
Have a
forward to
nice
Thank you
seeing
so
you
day.
soon.
much.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, bye. See you. Thank you.